So now we have a special moment, the first panel of the day. I call on stage 4 smart green people. We have 2 VCs and 2 startups, Bart Markus of Wellington and Michael Linse of Kleiner Perkins and Oliver Stahl of Entelios and Pascal Mauberger of McPhy Energy. And you can choose, shall we a sandwich of the 2 startups? Or would it be unfair?
What do you want to do?
Yeah?
Want me somewhere else?
Yeah, maybe you're here outside.
As far away from you as possible, right?
And wherever you want? Maybe here?
Yeah.
If you need water, help yourself.
I need to turn it a little bit, as I can't see Michael.
All right.
I want to be able to look him in the white of his eyes.
So we want to talk about the differences between the US and Europe in terms of how you guys do the business from the investor's point of view and the startup point of view. Only one figure to get it started. On average, an American startup, Cleantech startup, gets 4 times more capital compared to a European startup. And there must be a good reason. Michael, what do you think is the reason why the Americans get more money on average? Do they really need it?
I don't know if they really need it. I would suspect that a major reason has to do just with the historical situation. There is not a lot of, not nearly as much venture capital available in Europe as there is in the US. And if you're a startup in the US, you have a bigger initial addressable market, you have more capital available. Well, you're going to develop a different business plan than if you're focused on a smaller market in Europe, likely one market initially, and are faced with the fact that you're probably not going to be able to raise the kind of money that a US startup would. So you're going to target your business plan towards that eventuality. You're probably going to not try to remove all the risks, in the first year. You're probably going to do it gradually, and you're going to raise capital gradually, and you're not going to be as aggressive about hiring. So I think if you're faced with that situation, you're going to react differently as a result. I don't think that VCs or entrepreneurs in Europe or the US have different end game aspirations. It's just they're faced with a different environment.
Market size and capital availability.
Yeah, I would have thought. I mean, people tend to be maybe overly optimistic in the US and maybe a little bit less so in some European markets, but...
Any disagreement from you guys, Bart?
I think we try to address that question actually on our business cards. So I don't know if the camera can zoom in that close, if you can see, otherwise I'll describe what's on there. But it basically says on the back of our business cards, it says, think bigger. And so it's in America, you never need to tell an entrepreneur that he needs to think bigger. I mean, an entrepreneur will come, he says, why don't you give me 100 million today and I'll create $1 billion for you in 4 years. And you just say, oh, let's calm down a little bit. Why don't we start with 5? And if it works well, we'll give you another 20. In Europe, an entrepreneur will come to you and he says, why don't you give me 100,000 so I don't have too much dilution and I'll build up the company. I'll get my sister to do a little bit of stuff as well. And, in the end of the day, I'll be able to buy a house with a swimming pool and then I'll retire. And I think the Europeans just do not think big enough. And I think what you have seen happening in the past, I would say 10 years, is that European entrepreneurs are starting to think bigger. I think if you to take, someone used the Facebook example earlier today, I think there's a few companies that grew so big so fast, but if you take a Daniel Ek from Spotify, I don't think that his ambitions are any less than Mark Zuckerberg's ambitions at Facebook are. And so I think you start to get these entrepreneurs, but maybe it's something for the 2 entrepreneurs to comment on.
Pascal.
Well, I cannot comment for the US because we never raised money in the US. We have been able to finance our company in Europe with VCs. We were able to raise 15.5 million euro in 2 rounds of financing, 1.5 million euro just 1 year after the creation of the company. This is at the time that I joined the team of founders because clearly the 2 founders were more scientists and a technologist, and they were lacking a kind of businessman manager, so that's why I did, and I believe that secured a bit the VC. And we did a second round of financing in June 2010, and with Sophie Nova and Gim there in the room here, and we were able to raise the money we needed to create the business. So yes, we are ambitious. I believe this is something which is very clear. We started the company with 3 people. We are now 38, and we believe that we could be several hundreds in some time and create a very, very strong business in the energy storage. So lack of ambition, I don't know if it's really a cultural issue or it depends on the people. I mean, I come from big companies in the past. I've been with a next startup which have grown a lot. I mean, Cleantech in France, which is known. I managed Cleantech for 5-6 years at a period where the growth was very, very strong. And I came at a point to say, well, I need to do my own business. I believe I know how to do it, and I will be able to attract the investors and to build the project and then to go to the customers. So it's a matter of mindset more than cultural difference between American and French, I believe, or European.
Oliver, you found your business idea in the US.
True.
But you make it happen here in Germany.
Yeah.
There's a woman involved.
How do you see the differences?
No, I found my woman over there in Boston.
As well, okay.
As well. It's true. I spent a year in 2008 at MIT, and I went into this organization. I had the privilege to be a Sloan Fellow there, and we met the head of the MIT Venture Lab, if you so want, and he just taught us the first critical things. It says, if you spend a year here, you're looking for a business idea, look for one which is addressing $1 billion market. So look for this potential. Look for a global scaling possibility of your business. So you think, okay, that's the way how I was taught to think, spending 5 years at the University of Mannheim, take $100,000, do it small, do it, in your niche market, and then maybe go to other larger scale. It's just a different way of thinking. But we also were taught, and that's 3 things they like to tell you. Fail often, fail fast, fail cheap. What I mean is, fail often. I think that's the Edison example, 1,000 times, at least that's the saying. Mm-hmm. Fail fast means, don't go to your seller, develop a solution, then go out after a year and talk to your customer. No, first talk to your customers, Actually, there's a saying at the MIT, make love to your customer, and then improve it. But don't wait another month. Go out at the moment you have something different and talk to your customer, and then fail cheap. I think that plays to your example. It does not take $1 billion to see if something is wrong, Translated to Entelios, for instance, for the first year I had a team of 8 people. They were working without any cost, without salaries, just for the pure sake of being passionate about what we do. And we talked first to the customers. We found, in our instance, a utility customer. We found a utility customer willing to go with us, and then they spent a 7-digit number on us, and so that's how we evolved.
For example, didn't one of your general partners work with the US VC before he joined? Eric Ascher?
Eric did, yeah. He worked in the US first for Atlas. Well, he was 25 years in the Valley, right? So he actually started 2 companies, both backed by Sequoia. One was a 400 million exit, the other one a 600 million, and then co-founded E-Groups, was not operationally involved, and then he founded Benchmark Europe. So he's joined Benchmark in the US and opened the European office for that. So, but the slogan, think bigger, I'm trying to think, I think it actually was before Eric joined us. I think it's one of the reasons why Eric joined Wellington, because we like to do it the American way, true. Mm. And I would encourage every entrepreneur that, and this doesn't make sense for every business, right? There's plenty of businesses which are, in the end of the day, small businesses, and which you should run as a family business. I mean, if you're gonna, do a DVD shop on the corner, don't make every DVD shop into a Blockbusters, right? But I think if you want to do the kind of stuff in Cleantech, where there's, multi-billion-dollar markets, to talk with your partner John Doerr, energy is the mother of all industries, I think he once said at TED, right? And you want to think big.
Michael, your wonderful VC is doing quite a number of deals in Europe. Why is the US investor coming to Europe in order to find the great entrepreneurs here? What is the motivation? Isn't there enough opportunity over there in this huge market in the US?
There is. I mean, probably 90% of our investments in the green space are in the U.S. And we have a few in China and a few in Europe, mostly in Germany, in Europe. So we find attractive opportunities over here, and we try to make those investments. So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, how easy is it to think bigger if you don't hear, if you don't have the same access to capital?
Yeah, true. And so I think one of the big, and we, early this morning we talked about that actually the European VC industry is way too small for the amount of opportunities that are out there. And if you look at what we as Wellington have been doing is we have increasingly started to work with, actually with, people like yourselves, right? I think probably of the last 10 deals that we did, we've syndicated more than half of those with, I think we did 4 with you guys, we did a couple with Venrock, we did one with Vantage Point. So we work with the big American guys nowadays because there's just not enough European money slushing around the system. So true, you can think very big. If you then can't raise the money, I mean, yeah, it becomes small again.
Do strategics play a bigger role in Europe in terms of providing capital? Do they step in?
I think it's the same between, it's harder for me to judge the US, but I think neither in the US nor in Europe do strategics play a really big role. I think they play a role. I don't necessarily see them playing a role in terms of providing capital as much as, we look at strategic really for 2 business reasons. One is to provide distribution power. So you can address a market through a strategic, and that's why we take people into these companies. And the other thing is, and particularly in the Cleantech sector, often the whole product that you need to supply to a customer is simply too complex for a company to do. So we talked earlier today about Heliatech as an example, and so the organic photovoltaics company. So they work with BASF on the materials side, and they work with Bosch on the system side. So if you would have to do, I mean, BASF has 15 PhDs in their laboratories doing exclusive material development under a JDA with Heliatech. We couldn't even hire those 15 PhDs, right? Bosch is actually for Heliatech to make these foils, and then Bosch comes in and they help us to create systems out of that. You can do that, but these guys know how to do it. We would have to learn that, so it just becomes too complex to do that. So that's where I see more the role. Capital, less the case. And what we don't have, so it's a very different, which maybe another talking about capital. The US has had a climate where DOE and DARPA, but in particular DOE, has actually put large government grants in hand-picked companies. And so almost surprisingly, Europe has adopted a much more market-based approach, right? So they've just said, like, okay, if we want to sponsor, a number of industries outside of thermoelectric, I understand, then we put a feed-in tariff in place, and then everyone just needs to figure out how they can make the technology work in that place. Whereas in the US, like a Solyndra got, I think, $450 million from the DOE. I mean, Fisker obviously got a huge check. Tesla did. That is, in Europe, you can get 10 million if you're lucky, right? I mean, we've got some of our companies that have done that. That's the top of the range. You don't get much more than that.
So the 2 European startups, are you afraid of American competition entering Europe and giving you a hard time here?
Concerning what, investors or concerning the startups?
Other startups working on big
First of all, I mean,
storage
we are never really afraid of competition. We have competition, and competition is good, and that's the first thing. Our case is a bit specific because everything we sell today is out of France. And even we went for the first product very far in Japan. So I mean, it's a specificity in our model. France is lagging behind. Clearly, things are going much faster in Germany, in Italy, in the UK for hydrogen business, and I will pitch tomorrow morning. You will understand why. So we are not afraid. The problem is that if those people have access to more money, they will go faster. Yeah. And in our business, speed is everything. So we cannot be limited by the resources, human resources, but also financial resources. Maybe we have been lucky enough to secure the financing we need, and I believe we'll be able to continue doing so. When I did my second fundraising, we were in contact with some fund in the US. That was phone contact mainly. There was some interest, but clearly there is a kind of barrier. When we speak with those people like that over the ocean, we have difficulties to really understand, and I believe they are a bit afraid also that being European entrepreneurs, we won't have the right behavior that they are used to have in the US or in California. So it's maybe a kind of barrier that we should break, because there is no reason why those people could not invest in our business here in Europe. So there is competition. If they go faster, they will be better than us. So we have to run faster with the limited resources we have, and we have to be able to attract also more resources. It's our task, clearly.
In a day-to-day business, Oliver, how much do you learn from the US still on a day-to-day basis? How they do marketing, how aggressive they are, where they put the emphasis and the focus in growing the business?
Good question. Well, the best thing is know your competitors. When I was getting clearer what I focus on, I just went out and tried to meet all of them. I talked to the CEOs, I went to the fairs, I tried to get company tours and just to see what they do. And
a German spy?
It's somehow, yes, maybe. Well, they would do the same with us, you know. So got a clearer picture, where are they ahead and what's missing. And then coming back to Germany, talking, I don't know, 30, 40 utilities, seeing what their needs are with our solution, it became then quite obvious. I need to rebuild it because it's just a different environment there. Till today, I have contacts to the American competitors. Some of the larger, they try to come to the German market. They haven't achieved for 2 years. They even replaced their managing director for Europe. I go to their fairs. I'm part of some of their alliances, demand response alliances. I look a lot over there and learn as fast as I can and implement it in here. Competition is not necessarily a bad thing. It keeps you not sitting calm. It lets you sometimes sleep restless, but at the same time, with your competitor, you can faster build the market. And what we do is a paradigm shift. It's something we reinvent, which was never there before. And hence, we need to have others to build this market. No.
Michael, I would like to ask you, as an American VC doing a deal, what measures do you take to really support this company if it is only active in Europe? Are you sending people over on a permanent basis? Are you taking a board seat? Do you have smart co-investors? What is the trick to make sure that you can give this important or a similar kind of support and quality of support that you can give in the US? I also assume probably if you do a deal here, your industry network is not so big as it would be in the US.
Yeah, so I call Bart, that's right. And I do think you need to look at what you're good at. I think we would probably be not as good, having immediate influence on a company here when we're based, 9 time zones away. So we never invest without a European co-investor.
Mm-hmm. Number one.
Absolutely, and with a European lead co-investor. Mm-hmm. I think where we can be helpful, and I think we've demonstrated that we can be helpful, is helping a company that has, a great business in Europe and helping them access the U.S. market, which can often be a game changer in terms of scale, and helping them, figure out the pitfalls in the U.S. market, which can often be very, very large. So I think that's what we try to bring to the table. Often significantly larger check sizes and help with the U.S. market.
But you told me on the phone that the European venture capital market in Cleantech is following what the Americans are doing quite a lot. So whenever there is a big problem like a Solyndra collapse, the Europeans get scared too, although they haven't been involved in this kind of disaster.
Well, I think the statement I made was even more sweeping, generalistic. I think that in the venture markets overall, I mean, if you, the US still is the bellwether for what's going to happen in Europe 6 months later. I think that's just a fact. And so where Cleantech was totally hyped in the US probably like 2 years ago, I think, you know, it's changed, right? I mean, John's back to doing internet deals nowadays again, right? By and large. And the Vantage Point guys, you know, which were all Cleantech, they're going, well, you know, actually, you know, cloud software is quite cool too, again, and that's going to come over here. And it's already starting to arrive here, I think. So, yeah, so I think the Cleantech venture industries, and I said it this morning, is under a lot of pressure because of a number of urban myths, which are maybe not all necessarily true, but it's so young an industry, and it takes so long time to show these big successes that, you know, before we've disproven these urban myths with real cash returns, it's going to take a couple of years. So it's going to be, all of us will have to hang in there for the slog and be there. The one thing I want to say about US versus Europe in terms of, you know, US guys competing in the market, the big advantage that European startups have is that in Cleantech, a lot of the markets are bigger in Europe than they are in the US. I mean, the obvious example being solar, where, you know, until last year, that's now changing, half the world's market has been in this freaking country, right? I mean, that's crazy. And the US is like the number, I think US did 1 gigawatt or so, 900 megawatt last year, solar, something around there. So it's like the number 7 or 8 country worldwide. So it's a lot smaller. So I think that is a real advantage that people have here. So if the Americans come, they're going to come in here and they're going to compete in a strange market, right? I mean, so it's going to be hard for them, harder for them. The good thing that they have is they have access to, I think, deeper talent pools than Europe has. In Europe, when you find a great entrepreneur, you know, like these guys sitting here, you're very happy as a venture capitalist that you found a great team, right? And in the US, it's just easier to find really good talent for companies. That's just still a fact.
It's true. Coming over to the MIT, it's just amazing. It's part of the whole culture at MIT, entrepreneurship. It's just there in every angle, in every course you're taught. You go out to the VCs. There's a course just how to talk and address the VCs and how to pitch. There's a course how to talk with your...
That?
Yeah, I did. There's a course just to talk with your lawyers, you know, and then utilize your lawyers, you know, it's amazing. You walk over between the business school and the engineering school every day. You just do it because it's so amazing. Cultural-wise, I mean, the elevators are broken all the time. If there is heavy rain, it's just dripping and dropping all over the place at MIT. And still, you go to a small room and they're inventing micro nuclear power plants. You're just laughing. It's funny. There are 10,000 students, and I would say probably 5,000, half of them are somehow in entrepreneurship. It's just a different way of thinking, and it takes you with, you know, and having spent 6 years at the University of Mannheim, there was not a single course about entrepreneurship. Well, that's back in the 90s, but still.
So we need to educate our people more to become entrepreneurs.
Yes, I think so.
So the role model of becoming an entrepreneur, the live dream is a lot bigger in the US, and that could be something we can learn from.
Absolutely.
Pascal.
I can really... I come from one of the grandes écoles we have in France, you know, and never I've been told about entrepreneurship. I mean, that's something I learned a lot of very interesting things, but nothing that I really use in my life as an entrepreneur. And that's something we have to learn from the US education organization.
Are you happy now being an entrepreneur?
I am absolutely happy. That's the best period of my life, even if it's maybe a bit stressful. I mean, it's the best period of my life. But I mean, you have never been prepared to that. I mean, not at school, not in the engineering school. The business school maybe a bit more, but I even wonder if they do that in HEC or things like that. And when you work in a big corporation, you are never prepared to that also, because you are prepared to really take a bigger position in the corporation, not to become an entrepreneur. So you have to decide one day that it's enough. You are 40, 42, 45, you have to say it's enough, now I want to do something else. And then you have to learn by yourself in Europe. And in the US, as you said, I mean, it's part of their DNA.
So how do you change that?
It's where people put their energy, actually. And so I always used to call America the good enough society. So if you're in America, there's a pothole in the road. You know, the guys that's responsible for that road, he'll drive over it, he say, still good enough. So he's not going to put the $1,000 in, block the road for half a day and clean out the pothole. Try that in Germany, right? I mean, the highway is always perfect. It's like the elevator example, right? The elevator, you know, it's only one flight up. You know, who built the elevator in the first place? Let's focus on building a mini nuclear power plant. And then, you know, on the weekend, you know, the Americans are putting all their energy to, you know, getting this stuff going. And in Europe, you know, on the weekend, it's almost, you know, you're almost considered not normal if you spend your Saturday working. And when I, on Saturday night, you know, go into my study and start talking to, you know, my friends in the US, I mean, my wife goes like, what the fuck's going on here? And so it's a very different culture. So, and I think what I see changing there is not necessarily that the Europeans are becoming more American. I don't think that's happening. What I do see, though, is that the Americans are becoming more European. I mean, if I walk in Menlo Park, opposite your office in the Rosewood, that's a nice hotel. Could have been European, right? I mean, it's like, it's really cool. It's a nice place to be. And then the place which is taking that role that America has been playing is actually China. You go into China nowadays, that's where everyone's putting all their energy. They take 2 jobs, all the stuff that they used to do in the US, they do that in China nowadays. I mean, apart from, you know, they'll be successful because they steal the stuff from us, but they'll also be successful because they're actually working much harder than we are. And I think the Americans are becoming European, I think.
Let me give you another example. Of course, a lot of people are applying with us and coming, some of them fresh from the university. Having worked at university weekends, you know, just to go through the exams, the moment they apply and think they come to a corporate world, they have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday mentality. It's crazy, you know. So now I ask them, let's meet on a Saturday. Wait, you want to meet on a Saturday? I have now, it's a true story, the first applicant came in yesterday. He wants to have in his contract saying the work days are Monday to Friday.
Okay.
You know what I did with him?
Did he get the job?
Yeah, I was going to say.
He got the job.
You have to be ready to work very hard. Shall we open it up a little bit? Anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question here in the front? This gentleman needs a microphone. Tristan.
I have a question. If you compare the American VCs to the European VCs, speaking of with friends of mine active in the internet business, raised or copied many role models in the US, brought them to Europe. Once they start a really new idea, they say, well, what is the valuation I can get for that company? And that's, let's say, 5 to 6 million. Once they copy something, they can even get tickets of 20 million in. The US is different. If they see something really innovative, they'll put money into it. I ask myself to the European VCs, where is the venture in the word venture capital?
That was me, I guess, right?
Yeah, it looks like it.
The European VCs. So me, myself, and I, right? All 3 of us. Okay. No, so first of all, I mean, and I'm not going to call names here, but I do think that the risk aversion in the European venture industry is extreme. So most of our peers that you would talk to will only invest in something if it has revenues. Ideally, it has 10 million in revenues and where there's profitability inside. I mean, actually, in the Cleantech sector, I think most of the people are doing that. I can only talk for us. I mean, you know, I don't think, I've been 14 years in this business. I have never, ever invested in a company that had a dime of revenue when I invested in it. I never did it. In fact, my last deal that I did was Glow, the Swedish company. We invested 18 months ago, and that was based on a plan that 4 years after that point, they would see the first revenues. It's probably more 5 now, if I look at the plan today.
I get more money from him.
Hey, you're already in revenue. It's too bad. Yeah. No, so I think it's. I agree with you, and I think it's frankly, European. A lot of the people in the European venture industry are saying like, it's all about, getting every deal across the finishing line. I'll do 3 to 5x on the deals, and then, my whole fund overall is going to be fine. Well, reality is that even of those guaranteed 3 to 5x deals, probably is going to be more like, say 3x overall. Then there's going to be whatever, a third of them go wrong. Then you're at 2x. You take out your management fees and your carried interest. You do a 1.6x funds over 10 years to your limited partners. Well, that's a great way to do business. It's not. I mean, your limited partners are not going to give you money. So I think the way to do venture, we believe the way to do venture, is to put money in early, get a big stake in a company, and try to have 25% of a 2 billion IPO. That's what it's about.
Great. One question in the back.
Hi, Jan. Alessio speaking, Sofinova Partners. A question for both the VC and the entrepreneur. Bart, in your presentation before, you have been talking about the dream team. Change or find the dream team. How is the vision of both the VC and the entrepreneur on the fact that probably one day will be not part of the dream team?
Basically, the idea that the founder gets fired or something like this.
He doesn't need to get fired, right?
You can be the number 5th in the company at a certain moment in time.
I'll try to answer that succinctly. We make a big distinction between the internet businesses that we back and the Cleantech business that we back. Because in an internet business, if you don't have a team from day one that can actually drive it, because it's so easy to copy these businesses, if you have to go through a change of a team, change of a CEO, I mean, chances are you're going to be left out. Sure, you may later on when you're a more developed company, Google is a good example with Eric Schmidt, you can bring in these people. On the Cleantech side of things, I mean, if you bring in the person that can actually commercialize the technology at the moment where you're developing the technology, it's very rare that these people will want to be involved that early on. So actually there, you have to go through changes of team. And the example I gave on the Nexus, 6 founders, all 6 there today. None of them in the management team, all 6 significant shareholders. They're having a ball. They just moved to California, actually. We put our office in Redwood Shores. I mean, they're laughing. I mean, you walk over there, Leslie, the key technical guy there. I mean, he's got a smile from ear to ear. He loves it. So I think you can do it as long as people are upfront about it.
Any more feedback? Or one final question, and then I think we have a coffee break.
Well, there's always the chance, that an investor takes you out as a CEO. That's just part of the game. But then you have done a bad job. Or see it in a different way. There are always stages in a company development. Sometimes I like to say 1 to 20 people is one stage, 20 to 50 people is another stage. Sometimes it's better to bring somebody in to go through the next stage, and you just step aside. It doesn't mean you need to leave the company, or maybe yes, but you still maybe have your shares in the company, and the company grows. When I founded my first company, it was like my baby. You're so much passionate about it. But then another time I met a very successful entrepreneur who said, don't see it as your baby. Sometimes, just see it a little bit from a distance, and you can much more influence it, I don't know if you know what I mean, right? But yes, there's the chance, yeah. You are the CEO, the shit ends with you. And you're responsible for it. And sometimes shit hits the fan. That's like what the VC tells us.
One question here from Benny.
Yes, I try to make it very short, because you did talk about risk aversion in Europe versus behavior in the US. And where I'm still struggling a lot is, how do you make the difference between, let's say, seed financing and VC? So, because there is still, as I said, I'm struggling because I'm looking for initial investment, let's say a few €100,000, and to go further on with the ideas I have. Okay, thanks.
Who would like to answer?
That's not for me. Bart?
Well, I don't want to answer all the questions here.
Give a good seed recommendation.
Oh, we do seed too. We do everything. We give someone 300K and run and have him run with the idea. But we need to believe that it can become really big, and especially on the Cleantech side. My recommendation. So, restart. My recommendation would be is if you do seed financing of your company, if you can find someone in the ecosystem of the company that you're doing, and you can get that person to put that amount of money in, you get more than just the money. If you get seed money from, say, from me, I'm not going to spend time with you, right? I mean, we have $1.2 billion under management. If I give you $300,000, I mean, how can I ever spend real time with you? If you get someone that comes from that industry, he gives you $300,000, it's his own money, you know? He didn't buy the Porsche, but he put it in your company. You know, chances are he's going to help you a lot. So that's what I would look for.
And we have a closing panel tonight, which will be talking about incubating new ideas and seed financing, and we can go much more into detail like we do now during the coffee break. I want to say a big thank you to our wonderful panel.